So I think it's just that constant state of understanding that you are evolving and not fixed in who you are. And, and so it comes down to identity. It comes down to flexibility, malleability, and open-mindedness. And that is a constant effort on our parts, because it's not just mindset, it's race, it's politics, it's everything. It's coming at you from all sides. All this change is happening so rapidly. And so our job is, I don't know, I think it would be helpful if people just kind of like stood back and said, yeah, I have an opinion on this, but I'm not saying that my opinion is the only way this could be, So anyway.
All right. Welcome everyone to another edition of Lanes of Mastery. Today we have a very special guest to me, actually, even though she doesn't know it, or why, I should say, maybe. We have a very special guest. I'll let her introduce herself, but we have a very special guest today who's going to talk about something near and dear to my heart and that her and I have in common. And so I'm always interested in hearing what another like-minded individual thinks about the same things, different things, but the same genre, same area, right?
Yeah.
So with no further ado, I will let her kind of introduce herself, anything she wants to say starting up, and then we'll get it going.
So first of all, thank you for having me. My name is Bryn Drescher. I like Coach Bryn, but all my handles on social media go by my first and last name, so we'll just leave it at that. I guess, official title, although I will say I'm not a huge fan of labels for many reasons in the mental game, but nonetheless, one could call me a mental performance coach, a mindset coach, whatever. But yeah, my lane is mindset and manifestation, all things to do with sort of harnessing the power of our mind. And I've done it for athletes on the professional, college, high school level, as well as high-level business professionals and entrepreneurs. I love what I do, and I think that there is no greater mastery, truthfully, than to master oneself, specifically the mind.
Wow. Okay, so let me tell you why you're here.
Okay.
So kind of like we talked about a little bit before this, before we came on, this is called Lanes of Mastery. So being in the coaching game, I haven't done it, I believe, as long as you have. I've kind of made it more of a priority. I started off basketball training. I played basketball as well in college. And then I started off basketball training athletes. And then I started realizing, like, in order to improve their physical performance, I had to start working with their mind, because they had a lot of physical desires that their mind wouldn't sign off on, so to speak, right? So anyway, so I've kind of just got into it maybe in the last couple years more purposefully. But anyway, maybe about 2 years ago now, I saw a video with David Shands. And he was interviewing one of my close friends, A.D. Dolphin. I don't know if you know who that is. Yeah, he and I grew up together. He's older than me, but he's like my older brother. So he's actually been on an earlier episode of this, right? Nice. Last week. But he and I grew up together. So so I saw David interviewing him. So I went on his site and I was like, oh, that's cool. Let's see who else he interviews. Anyway, I found the morning meetup. And I was looking for something for Veronica, for my girlfriend, to kind of support her entrepreneurial spirit and things that she was just aspiring to get into a little bit more, but didn't necessarily have all the connections and the understanding and all the different things. So that led us to the morning meetup, obviously, right? And on there was the first time I heard you. So for the first couple of mornings, I just sat in for maybe 5 minutes, and then I just kind of wanted to walk away because it was a Valentine's Day gift, actually.
Oh,
so,
nice.
And I was like, okay, we need to get you going together if you want to do something. So I sat in for the first maybe just a couple 5 minutes out of my own curiosity, and you were the host. And so I sat in a couple of days and I was like, wow. It was very, well, I didn't know what to expect,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it was very different than even what I thought it would be. So then I was like, oh, okay, cool. So then one morning, I was getting ready to get dressed and I was going to get some clothes and she was on. She was on the call with you guys. And
Yeah.
I heard you again. I said, who is that? Who is that? And it was you. And I said, wow, like she's good at what she does. Like your
Thank you.
command of the show, like your personality, your authority, but you have like a nice blend of a lot of things. I said, wow, I want to talk to her
Yeah.
because immediately you stood out. You were in a
Thank
lane that you mastered, right? And so I said, okay. And so on my journey, I've this whole podcast is about picking people's brains or picking the brains of people who I see do something well, where they stand out to me. And I'm like, I don't want to be an electrician or I don't want to be a plumber or a doctor, but they make me like it. Like
Yeah.
they talk about it in a way right. So you in your lane remind me of that.
Thank you.
So that is why you're here, right? And so what our first question I want to ask you is, I guess we'll go back earlier, but um, even if just in that little part, how do you do that? How do you rock the crowd like LL, or how do you do that? You command all those people. How do you do it?
So I've been fortunate. First of all, thank you for all of those really nice things you said about me. Yeah, I would say that there was a time that I don't know. I've always been somebody who's had really electric energy. Like it's been something like I was a captain of my track team in high school, always quite outspoken as a child. I was just a natural born leader. In fact, all of my parent teacher conferences were often, well, Bryn's great. We just wish she would use her ability, towards what the efforts of the class versus, getting everybody to laugh with her and take them away from what, the main aims are.
Okay.
I think I've been
Okay.
entertaining and sort of doing that forever. So I think that I don't believe in the whole natural thing. Like you have to be born like that to master something, because I think having the ability is sort of like that wild horse that runs really fast, but hasn't quite been trained, right? So I've had the naturalness of the ability to be gregarious, relatability, all of those things kind of, I think there was all those components there ever since I was a kid, because I've always liked people. My mom was like that. So I think I got a little bit of that from her. My dad has a lot of charisma. So I think all that stuff, I kind of was equipped coming into the game with a certain amount of that. And then I did public speaking. I worked in the schools and I worked for an organization, which fortunately I just was with masters, like master facilitators who, through the first of all, just being able to, like, obviously facilitating a room in person and then having to do it via Zoom with lots of screens off and things like that. So I was facilitating for high schoolers, middle schoolers, and kids are a tough crowd. So to be able to keep them engaged, keep it high energy, keep it, also have the moments that you could go a little softer and stuff, that was all something that I had to learn the nuances of. So I had all of the right components. As you know, as an athlete, sometimes we get some talent that's got a lot of the right stuff, but they don't quite know how to put it together. And so I was fortunate to study under some people who I wouldn't say necessarily had my natural gift for like all that electric energy, but they knew how to really command a room, how to really get a message home. And so those are the finer points of facilitation, because some people think it's just being loud or just being energetic. And it's like, I'm now looking at it from the lowest common denominator, to the most common denominator, because I'm thinking like, okay, there's somebody in here who hasn't spoken. There's somebody in here who we need to hear it. And so trusting your instincts. I mean, there's so many things I could speak about it, but I was just very fortunate from years and years to watch and emulate people that at the time, sometimes I found annoying, sometimes I found restricting, because I wanted to do me, I wanted to do it my way. And I think, I had to learn to pick my moments and not make it all about me and really know how to make it about them and relate and connect. And so all of those things, I think I got over time as far as facilitation, which has also helped me be an amazing coach. And so I'm just grateful for, the life training that you get. I think sometimes people think mastery is only studying one thing and like studying it your whole life. But I think really, to me, mastery is bringing all the parts of you and all of the lessons that you got from the time that I worked at Burger King briefly or the Gap when I was, in college or whatever, and just taking all of that and being able to find where I can kind of put my finer touches on, what I do.
Okay. Okay. Did you work at schools or in schools?
No, I worked for a nonprofit. It was called Educare Foundation, and we did empowerment workshops. I mean, it was called the ACE program. It's a completely branded program that Educare formed before I was there. The beauty of the program, though, is each facilitator brings their own personal stories and experience. Like, we have a definite curriculum that was defined for me. But the way that I teach it, or the way that I, maybe stress a point or whatever, there were certain things that we knew we had to emphasize, but then we had some room to play with and, really kind of use our personality to make sure that this particular room of kids, was going to receive it. We were with them for like 6-hour days. So it was, we were there these were 3-day, it was the main program was the 3-day ACE program. And each day built upon the next. And then we do like a grad, like it's called family night, but it's like the grad night of it. And then you kind of bring the family and get to see the growth of their child over the 3 days, having them share what they learned and stuff like that. So it was really powerful. I loved doing it. And the people that I was facilitating with were like, veterans of not only this program, but facilitating over like 20, 30 years. And so sometimes their attention to detail to something as simple as how the room's set up, like where the chairs are, how we're going to set up the lunch, when we're going to do, what's the timing of the schedule, how long does it take to facilitate that block of something. So like all of those things coming into, the morning meetup, people are like, wow, you're really good at this. I was like, yeah, I had been doing it. So I knew how to do it. And then it just happened to be that Dave was the one hosting the calls. And then he realized that he would probably need to travel or do things. So he started tapping some of the members. And all of us had our, opportunities. But given that I probably had the most experience doing it, I would say that it was just eventually I just outshined. And not to say anything about them, but it was, it was just kind of like I was the clear choice. But I never asked for the job. I just went in and was me. And then, Dave started relying on me more and more. And then eventually I just became the main host. But there really wasn't a general like conversation that I would be the host until he started paying me. And then he was just kind of like, hey, I'd like to pay you, which I would have still done it for free because I love it so much that it's just as whatever gift giving for me as it is for them. So to do it.
So you were a part of the morning meetup just as a
member,
for lack of better words, member or student or
no, 100%.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
So I came in so basically I'm on the West Coast, just like Vero. And when I was getting up in the morning, like, it's 4:30. So initially I just had a headphone in my ear, laying in my bed, listening to it. Cause I'm like, this is too early for anybody to be up. Right. And then there was a guy who had presented, this is before Vero joined, I think, but his name was Jake Taylor Jacobs. And he came and gave like this, fire presentation that just fired you up. And basically I was like, okay, I need to like start participating in these calls, like not just being another one of those black spaces, boxes in the back that with no camera on, no sound, not really talking. So then I jumped in and started participating in the second book they read, and I just shared every day on the book club, which Dave was hosting.
Okay.
Dave hosted the call.
Okay.
But then eventually, I think he had to travel. He had something going on, his anniversary, something. And that's when they started asking different members, not anyone, I'm sure he chose the ones that were the most vocal and whatnot. to say, could you host? Could you host? Could you host? And like, so each of us had a day that particular week. And then there was another times. And so I subbed in here and there, but I wasn't the main choice initially. It was just, we all got a shot. And then I couldn't honestly tell you when it switched to me only. I don't remember that shift. I just know that eventually I was the one that was always pinch hitting when he was not around. And then he was just like, you know what? You're better at the book club. So why don't you just do it? So that's just kind of how that happened.
Wow. Okay. We're going to get this. We're going to shift in a second. One more question on that. Mm-hmm. What have you how is that particular experience? How has that helped you, whether it's as a person or with your business, which we'll get to as well, but what did that experience do for you, or what is it doing for you?
So, I mean, I came in it's interesting because even with EduCare, I came in as a volunteer, and then they noticed me as a volunteer and were like, and again, I had already spoken, I had already done it, but I never came in like, put me in the front of the room, coach, like, give me a shot. I knew I liked it when I came, and I was volunteering in the back of the room, just supporting. And then eventually from them getting to know me, they're like, would you ever want to be up there? And so I think for me, I always just what it has done to host the morning meetup is just increased my confidence in my skills, helped me trust myself more to really take the power that I've been given to use it versus just seeing myself as the host of the book club or the host of the call as less than David, right? So because initially it's kind of like, this is David's group. This is David's call, right? But when I have the floor, which to be honest, most of the time he's not on the call when I'm running it until I turn it over to him when he takes over at the, after the book club's over and everything. It was just to trust myself to go with my instincts and to say what I needed to say. And he even encouraged that, right? Because I think there's times that I would sort of step back because I'm like, oh, it's not mine. And he would just be like, rant. Like, I want to see your personality. I want you to show you. And so I think I have no problem speaking my mind, but I never wanted to step on the toes of the thing. And it was just having to own and take up space and say, it's okay, I can say these things. And also just respecting that I'm in a group that isn't mine. So even if there's times that I may not 100% agree with everything, and I'm always conscientious of that I can share that on my own platform. I can share that elsewhere. So just choosing my moments, making sure that I know the tone of the group. So it's done a lot and it's also, I'll tell you something else that probably a lot of people don't know. I'm half white, and part of my upbringing was sort of feeling like, I don't know if Black people rock with me like that, right? Even though I have Black friends, I have plenty, I don't sound like totally crazy, but I got lots of Black friends, but most of my friends are. But it was just that feeling I'm going into an environment with people who mostly consume content by Black people and whatever. So I'm like, is this really my crowd? Because I don't know. I didn't know bar. I didn't say I would never read a book quote and say, I got a bar to share. So I had to learn the lingo too a little bit. But it also helped me know that I'm good for all audiences. People accept me. They like me. They like me for who I am. I don't have to be a caricature or a version of myself to be accepted. So.
Okay. All right. We're going to shift gears a little bit. So I know that you were an athlete, right?
Yes.
In college, high school, college, and things like that. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I ran track all the way through high school and college. I did play 2 years of basketball. Funny enough, most of the athletes I work with have been basketball players, but interestingly enough, I'm not a basketball player really. I mean, if you count I probably played in junior high and then the 2 years in high school, but then I realized track was my better sport, so I just stuck with track. I let go of basketball. I didn't particularly care for the coaches, to be honest. And I mean, I didn't have the mental fortitude to understand when a coach wasn't giving me what I needed, or I didn't like that I needed to figure out a way to still make it work for me, But track, I felt more nurtured. I felt more seen. I was more talented. So I leaned into the sport that I exhibited more mastery, since we're talking about lanes of mastery. I stayed in my lane, right? It was like, yeah, get rid of the ball and just run real fast in that direction. So that's what I did. But yeah, so yeah, it was, and I think what that gives me is that leadership, that knowing what it is to be a part of a team. I mean, I know track, people say it's not the same as like a basketball team, but we still are a team. Yes, we compete in individual events. I mean, obviously I was part of relays, so there is obviously a team component to a relay, and obviously the meet itself, you're still getting points, right? But I don't know. I loved being a part of sports. It gave me a lot of confidence, pride, and just that work ethic, really, right? I mean, you can't deny that as an athlete, particularly a college athlete, high school too. I mean, those workouts were brutal. And then you meet stadium stairs in college and you're like, okay, all right, maybe there's another level to this, Something like that. We did ramps. We didn't do the stairs. We did the ramps to the stadium, up to the bleachers, the nosebleed seats. So same thing.
Okay. So, all right. So now so you finished college and so, what do you do? Okay. So how did you get into the coaching? So we'll get into that now, because I know I definitely want to hear that.
Yes.
Get into that.
Yeah, so people always ask me that. And, it's kind of interesting. Like, I think I was always naturally giving people that kind of, like, I knew I wanted to do something around, like, the first time I heard The Secret, or read The Secret, saw the movie, whatever, I don't know. I think I saw the movie. I probably didn't read it. I'm not sure. But nonetheless, I was like, oh, I love this. And then I went to, like, seminars. I was T. Harv Eker, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. It's called the Millionaire Mind Intensive. I was in an MLM and somebody gave me a book of his, Secrets of the Millionaire Minds. And then I ended up going to the Millionaire Mind Intensive. And then I did like his whole curriculum for like a year. And it was awesome. Really? And, and then I just really was hooked. Like as soon as somebody put a mic in my hand and I got a chance to like stand in front of people, I always knew I liked acting, performing, all that stuff. It was like, okay, I like this. But getting into coaching, it was kind of like, I did some life coaching, when people call like, yeah, you're a life coach, whatever. I did that. And I was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So it wasn't a straight patch, the coaching. I attempted it, but then it was kind of like, I got to get a real job and go do these other things, kind of that balance. But once I got out of corporate America and went into entrepreneurship, I knew I wanted to do something around mindset. I had some limiting beliefs about whether I could make money selling mindset. So I attempted other things. Like, since I'm good on camera, I'll teach people how to be video marketers, or I'll do people's SEO, or, other things. And then, but I realized that I really just didn't want to package the mindset in anything else. I just wanted to do the mindset. So a friend of mine, well, actually a coach of mine, or somebody I had paid to give me some tips on speaking, he said, have you ever thought about coaching athletes? And I was like doing something with athletes. And I was like, because I use a lot of sports analogies and references, right? So I was like, yeah, I don't know. I guess I never thought about it like that. And so I just went to a basketball camp here in California. And I just said, hey, I'm a mindset coach, and I just needed one team to give me a shot. And at that camp, I got a coach to give me a chance, and I was able to get started in that specifically. So I had already been learning all this stuff, studying, becoming a student of the craft more than anything. And then, you just need one person to give you a shot. And I took AAU basketball team, and we went through the whole season, did a couple seasons with them, and flew to Hawaii and got to do all the cool stuff that you get to do when you're part of an AAU team. And then I got my first college program because I had a friend that knew the coach. And then, during the pandemic, got my first NBA players, and, so it kind of went from there. So, and then as far as the entrepreneur thing, people have been telling me to do it, but I was like, I want to stay with the athletes. But then the morning meetup, they just kept tugging at me. Can you do it for us too? And so that's kind of how that went over into entrepreneurship, because it wasn't that I hadn't ever coached an entrepreneur before, but I was wanting to stay in my lane. And then everybody was just kind of
Yes,
like, what about business people? So I was like, as long as the program stays the same and I don't have to offer two different things, then I can do it. And so that's what I did. And,
yeah.
as you know, Vero's coached with me. So I was very fortunate that people were very receptive to my way of coaching. And I think it's probably speaking and coaching are my two main, speaking, coaching, facilitating, whatever you want to call it, are like my levels of masteries right there. So.
Okay. So I know you.
Go ahead.
Say it again.
I said, and hours of doing it too. So it's not,
Yeah.
it's not like I was a natural. Like I think I've always been a natural at how to relate to people, but figuring out how I had to offer that program to so many different people in different ways before I figured out how to like really get it tight and, have a system. By the time Vero got it, she got a much better version of what I was teaching, when I was first starting, So
Yeah. I guess we improve at anything, right?
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So, so you're doing that, and so now, what? That's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you two different things at once. So, I know you mentioned one person. Who are some of your favorite mindset authors? I guess you could say people that you really feel that you vibed with, or that you feel has helped you, things like that.
So when I first started out, I think there's always been like that little bit of intersection between spirituality and mindset stuff. So I was kind of I told you about T. Harv Eker, and he doesn't have a lot of spirituality in there, although he does talk about energy and such. So I think, but it wasn't like I was like, oh, John Assaraf or, Bob Proctor and all of them. I heard about them later, right? Like I was more into like Don Miguel Ruiz and Abraham Hicks. And so these are not necessarily people that they were talking about energy. Napoleon Hill, Louise Hay. So like these were the people that like I was kind of like slowly but surely these people were being put in my path. And then Neville Goddard and Joseph Murphy, like those two are my like guys, really Neville and Joseph. And so when I came across them, it was like, cause like Don Miguel was the first one. I grew up Catholic. So I was kind of like, I had questions about all that spirituality stuff, but I was like, Don Miguel Ruiz put some things in perspective for me that kind of felt like they just like were finally answers that resonated with my spirit. And then, Louise Hay came to me and all of these people, and I was like, oh, I love this stuff. Right. So I was just eating it up. And so, and then Abraham Hicks. And when I found Neville, it was just like, he broke down the Bible stuff, which, most people say like in a way that I was like, it makes sense to me. I love this. Now I'm not so much like, okay, this book, because I learned all the gems, or at least he helped me discover the gems in the Bible that maybe before I might reject under the dogma of something. So, yes. And what I like to say is when I found those people, it spoke to me in a way. And then it also gave me, since I had such a broad perspective and I had read other people like Carol Dweck, Mindset, the book, which I think everyone should read, about fixed and growth mindset. And I think, I'm trying to think of other books like The Alchemist and, certain things, what was that book? Oh gosh, the Celestine Prophecy, like just certain books that I remember that came to me at certain times that just all gave me another level of understanding. But yeah, I don't know that I have like one go-to. I would say Neville's the one that I probably teach the most sort of about now, but even then I don't necessarily like use him because I want people to be able to find their own way in versus me telling them like what's the best way to the mountaintop. I'll use those, but I'll say, hey, whatever speaks to you, so that if you are a different faith, a different walk, a different, even if you don't have a faith, then I still think you can get to the top of the mountain. It's not about, you believe in what I believe. So anyway.
Oh, okay. So now you're coaching, you're doing your thing. So how, what do you think people really from your experience, what do you think people really need the most help with?
I think most people, it's kind of interesting. I was talking about I think one of the things I talk about in my challenge is like binary thinking, but it's this or that type principles. But I think that's one of the things where everything's either this or this. It's black or white. It's up or down. It's left or right. And I think that a lot of times we have a very fixed idea of the world. And I was even talking about this in like generations, right? As the world is evolving and changing, you find yourself at one point at odds with your elders because you're like going in the progression of the world and they're still holding on to their old ideas, right? And then there's that full circle moment where you become the old guard and then there's the new guard. And I think it's good that it happens like that because you get a chance to see that, like I was saying the other day, like all the commercials have mixed couples now. Things are changing in the world, like even like getting your hand, around gender identity and all the different things that are coming into question. And so I think people need help really understanding that they should not ever, like having values is good, figuring out who you are, but then understanding that that's going to be changing moment to moment and it can be changed moment to moment. So not having a fixed idea only of you and then also of the world because everything is changing at such a rapid rate now. Our job is just to stay open and curious rather than I know this and I know, because, then you find yourself saying the things you make fun of your parents for saying, which is the way that we've always done it. It's like, it doesn't matter what you've always done. And I think that's with athletes, right? People say, oh, the athletes in my day. And I'm like, right, but we're not in your day. So we're not looking to shed all the good of the past, but we're also looking to make way for what these new athletes and new generations are allowing us. So I think it's just that constant state of understanding that you are evolving and not fixed in who you are. And, and so it comes down to identity. It comes down to flexibility, malleability, and open-mindedness. And that is a constant effort on our parts because it's not just mindset, it's race, it's politics, it's everything. It's coming at you from all sides. All this change is happening so rapidly. And so our job is, I don't know, I think it'd be helpful if people just kind of like stood back and said, yeah, I have an opinion on this, but I'm not saying that my opinion is the only way this could be, So anyway.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think people confuse? I don't want to say we, because I know we do similar things, but from your perspective, like, what do you think people confuse about what you do? What do you think people's misperception or misconception is about what you do? I tell people like sometimes if I'm like teaching maybe a couple weeks ago, I was teaching a class and I said, this is not motivational speaking or like positive thinking.
Yeah.
This is not something for you to be sweating and falling down and running up and down the aisle and then walking out the same way you walked in, right? So I think sometimes people come in with this mindset of like, you're supposed to give them all the answers, pump them up, shine them up, dust them off, and they're ready to go with no work on their own. So what do you think what do you think about?
I think one is that anytime you mention the mind or anything mental, they think mental health. So they automatically assume something would have to be wrong with them to need someone like us. So I think that's important. You don't have to be broken to get better. You don't have to be hurt to get better, right? That kind of thing. Because a lot of people are like, oh, well, because if you look at the way sports is, like they're very reactive. Somebody's having an issue. They're having a breakdown. Let's get them with the coach. Now, it's changing. It's getting better, right? The coaches are doing a better job of bringing these sports psychologists earlier and things like that. And I think the second thing is that there is like a one size fits all approach to this whole process. And, and it's like, what's the game? How do I game my mind? How do I get like I need quick results. And
Yeah.
as I've told my clients, it's not an overnight thing, it's an over life thing. This is a constant evolution. I had a guy on my podcast, his name's Michael Gervais, and he's one of the top performance, psychologists out there. But he said, ask yourself who you are for about, 50 years and then you're getting somewhere, right? Like, so we're not looking for like these quick fixes. So like, I think the biggest perception is that we can do it quick and that we could just, like you said, that positive thinking, that toxic positivity, it's just about positive thinking. And I think it's understanding is like, what I say is I want to help you make an ally out of this instead of an adversary, because you're functioning perfectly as you have been programmed and conditioned yourself to function. So the good news is you're not broken. We just have to, adjust the settings of what you're doing. So like sort of like the school system, right? It's not broken, it's working the way it's designed. Well, we're taking the biology of the brain or the physiology of the brain, and we're using it in a certain direction. And we just don't know that we can actually, adjust some of that to get better results. And so, yeah, I think it's just that, we're only helping you if you're like having a breakdown, and we're only talking about positivity, like airy fairy, sit on your ass, don't do anything. And that's not what this is about. But, so like, I think that's the thing. I think those are the two biggest things you come up against.
And, from my personal experience, I find myself trying to figure out like, how can I get through to this person, right? Like you find yourself trying to, like you said, every kind of situation is different, and you're trying to figure out how to get in to help, right?
Yeah.
Like what are some of the things that you kind of look back and laugh at that you've maybe tried to do or that you've done just to try to get somebody to understand, like like, do you like help me help you? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like things like that.
I've been fortunate because I'm the queen of the analogy, and I'll use anything I have to get through to you. So I think, I think in the early days, it was wanting it more than they wanted it, or having my own agenda about what they should be getting from it. And then what I realized was the more that I could just allow for there to be like, yes, there's some tenets and some language that I want to give them, but also I can coach them in real time with what they want to ask me, where they're at versus me telling them. It's sort of like that parent-child relationship. A lot of parents want to tell their children things instead of listen to them. And, we want to impart wisdom. We're big on imparting wisdom, particularly adults to the youth. And I think we do this with our clients too. Like, I can see it so clearly. How can I make you understand this? But I think the thing is meeting somebody where they're at, developing that relationship. So yeah, I laugh at myself from, thinking I had to have all the answers or, freaking out. Like, but when I meet I had a guy on my podcast and I asked him, he coached for the Tampa Bay Rays. I tell the story all the time. And I said, did you ever get scared that they'll ask you something that you won't know or whatever? And he was like, yeah, in the beginning, because I thought I had to have all the answers. But then I realized they have all the answers. My job is just to come in and help highlight and pull out versus, to enhance what's already there, help them uncover versus like I'm giving them something, And so I think it's just maybe the hubris of thinking like I know so much and I'm coming in to like bless you with my knowledge. And I think once you get past yourself and realize that this is a human being, and if you listen to them enough and you find out, so I use a lot of analogies, like since I know Vero works on Shopify sites, I'm going to make it Shopify related. I don't know everything about her business, but I break it down in the analogy of where they're at instead of, using highbrow language. Like probably the funniest thing is trying to get men to admit vulnerability by asking them like what they're vulnerable about, like, directly, and learning that they're not going to tell me that. So I have to find more creative ways to get them to open up to me because they're just taught that, in some situations, maybe they will feel comfortable, but asking them specifically about limiting beliefs, or like, it's sort of like, yeah, back in the day, maybe, but not anymore. And I'm like, I know you have limiting beliefs, but
Right.
I know that it's not that I'm asking, they're being stubborn. It's that I haven't found the way in. And so I never blame the client. I'm always like, my job is to have a bag of tricks to come at this as many angles as I can, rather than make it like they're just not getting it. Because if I'm good, right, and then not to say that I'm going to get across to everybody every single time, then I'm going to find my way in a language that they understand. And that's what I think is really important.
Yes. Oh. How has, I don't know if we're going to use the word changed, but for lack of better words, how has this journey of coaching, changed you? Or what has it done to you? What has it done for you? Just, not only your professional life as far as gaining, achieving success, but just you as a person.
Well, I think as a coach, right, every coach should have a coach, for one. So I have continued to get coaching myself to make sure that I'm the best version of myself, right? Because I'm sure you as a coach have had those moments where you're saying something to a client and you're like, this is for me. Like what I'm saying to you, I should be listening to. This is like this is literally the answer I was seeking last night while I'm teaching this other person. So I think it helps you just be better for you. Like, any coach that doesn't think they need to continue to work on themselves, educate themselves, eat their own cooking, whatever the case is. And that cooking has to be often served by someone that's not you. So I think coaching has helped me be even more self-aware, even more taking myself to task, and super hungry for that, just continually digging deeper, right? So there's levels to this, like, and we know evolution is this, not, growth is not this, right? Everybody's like, oh, it's up. No, it's this. It's basically the layers of an onion. And so I'm going to continue peeling. And it's made me not ever go to a point where I've arrived and I'm so much like feeling, one, better than my clients. No, never. And two, thinking I'm done. Like, I'm good. Like, I teach this stuff. This is my jam. Like, I'm calling myself out all the time, and I use my own fallings in my teaching. So I think it's made me more humble. It's made me more, I love transparency. It's one of the values that I have. Like, if someone were to ask me to list out my core values, transparency and authenticity is there. So it's just really made me see that I can use my own life in my own way, without having to follow somebody's formula of, you got to tell them the worst things that's ever happened to you. And you got to, it's like when it's the right time, but like doing it when it feels like, just trusting my gut to go with, hey, I could share this. I can develop this relationship. So I don't know. There's so many things. I could go on, but I think being a coach has just made me a better person. Like, and not because of all the people I help. That's a bonus. But like the work that I do on myself to be able to be that coach and, to earn the right to be able to sit in that chair. And I think that everyone does this on some capacity. So if you're listening and you're like, I don't know, when do I get there? When do I know? It's just like, well, you're going to start with some people that are maybe, like they say, like maybe a step behind you, not 20 million steps, right? And then eventually you're going to climb up that ladder, of experience. So.
Mm-hmm. And that's so interesting. You're talking about, like the onion and things like that.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, I guess maybe it's a question I'm asking you for your perspective on, like, sometimes I think to myself, like when somebody's asking me something, I'm like, this is so obvious and so clear. And it's like, I feel like I'm just giving it to them real good, like Lil Wayne or Jay-Z. Like this information I'm giving to you is just so good. And then I think to myself, like it makes so much sense, but then it's like, why am I having such a hard time, maybe in a different area, but with the same information would be as useful? Do you ever feel like I guess you kind of alluded to it when you said, like, I'm talking to you, but this is really for me. Yeah. So, like, I feel like sometimes, like, like I feel like I know the answer and it's so obvious and easy. And then when I'm trying to apply it to myself, it feels like it's Chinese.
That's
Like,
why
do you ever
you
find that? Do you ever find yourself feeling crazy? Like,
100%. Like it's like you. That's why I'm saying like I call them. I don't know if it's the right word, but like prescient moments where you just all of a sudden feel like I'm saying this to you, but I know this is for me. Like, but it's because like I think that I was saying this like when I coach. It makes me understand the material at a deeper level
yeah,
because
yeah,
you've got, it says in the Bible where two or more are gathered in my name, right? So you got two people you're drawing on. You get a group of people on a call. Now you got 8 filters you're kind of filtering this information from, and they're pulling from you things. Because I know you've had as a coach where you've said things that you've never said before. And you're just like,
yeah,
you hear
yeah,
yourself say it, you're like, I never said that before, but that was really good, right? And it's
yeah,
why,
yeah, yeah. Right.
yeah, it's like the magic. But when you're going through your own, it's like you're trying to dig yourself out of a tunnel without a flashlight, and you're like, why can't I
Yeah.
see so clearly? Because I have a flashlight into somebody else's tunnel, so of course I can see super clearly and all that. But when it's my tunnel, I need somebody to have that flashlight and that magnifying glass to help me and catch what I don't connect the dots because I've been telling that story for years. So it just sounds like. And then you have a coach say something, you're just like, yes, wow, it's so obvious. And I find myself saying to my coaches all the time, this is exactly what I teach my clients. I just say this all the time. But then they'll put it in a way that it isn't that I didn't know it intellectually, but it's like it has to go layers deep. It's never that what our coaches are teaching us necessarily, like when you're the coach, right? That is so revelatory in the sense of you
Okay.
never
Yes.
heard it before, but you never heard it
Right.
in that way before. You've never had that
Okay.
dot connected to that dot in a way that you're just like,
Okay.
oh my God, that's the missing piece to the puzzle that when you complete that 1,000-piece puzzle and it's got that one piece on the floor, you're just like, oh my God, finally. So I think, but yeah, all the time do I think like, how come I can apply it here, but I can't apply it there. But I think, that's the beauty of why when you hear success stories, you have to know that you don't know that person's background in that area. So some of us excel in money, but can't excel in relationships. Some of us excel in business, but then find ourselves faltering in family situations. So it's like, but there's a background situation there where everyone's got their own backstory that's going to be different. So some of us easily like triumph over certain things in certain areas, but then, we're terrible in others. And then other people are like find success so fast. And we're just like, that's why comparing apples to apples and even looking at yourself through the like, oh, my client's got it. How come I'm not getting it? And it's like, again, there's some things that you're getting that other people can't, right? How come you can pick up some sports right away and other people have to work at it, So I think that it's just important to continue to work and know yourself and know that movement is not necessarily in the result, but in the process because there's so much growth. Like I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, oh, you got mad, but you got back on faster than you normally do. That's the growth. Not that you never get mad. Not that you never lose your temper. Not that you never mess up, but how quickly do you recover now compared to a year ago that, say like, that's your growth, your reaction time.
Okay. How do you know? How do you know when it's time to? Like, I think this is maybe my own question for me.
Yeah.
Like, how do you know when it's time to? When you've done the best or the most you could with a person? Like, is it when it's time to either let them go or you're not making any more progress, or it's maybe you or them? I don't know. But do you ever have those moments where you feel like I'm hitting a wall or I've done all I could? Is that a real thing? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is to know once again, it's bigger than you, right? So like I've told my clients, like I have an 8-week program and then I have a year-long program. And I'm not going to say that my year-long program isn't good or continuing to coach with me isn't good, but I tell my clients all the time, we don't want codependency. But I also think
Yes.
about like when
Yes.
you have like if you go back to the and this is a movie reference, but just because it's the first example that came to me in Good Will Hunting, when he was trying to
Yeah.
get through to Will, but then he went and got Robin Williams to help with Will because what he wanted from Will and what Will needed were two different things. And then ultimately, where, what they both wanted was like, they had to figure out. So I think, being willing to bring somebody in when you're out of your depth is key, and know that that person doesn't necessarily have to be in that vein. But I think also, I have a fixed time that I work with clients now, but if I was working with somebody and they felt like they weren't growing with me at a point, I think you have to be the clinician, expert, whatever, that says, hey, you know what? I think you're doing a great job with me, and I'm glad that we're continuing to work. We've got a good foundation, but I think there's somebody that I know that could take you another level. So I think it's important to, either A, bring that person in as a specialist, which you could still do under your umbrella, but just not being, not again, that hubris of like knowing what's best for that person versus like what's going to hurt my ego. Like I can't get through to this person, but I'm going to keep cracking at it versus, or seeking out, like I'll go ask somebody. So sometimes it's not just that I need to switch, because again, that relationship part is so important and that takes time to earn. So I wouldn't necessarily bring somebody in, but I'm going to go seek out, hey, I've got a client that has this. What do you think? What's another way? And I've done that before, and it really helps. And I think most people will be helpful because they don't feel like you're like trying to take all of their trade secrets, especially when they respect you as a colleague or whatever. But just like, hey, I've got this situation with this one athlete, and because I had a difficult situation with an athlete, and I got to say that I learned a lot from that situation, like what you promised going in, what not knowing enough about that athlete to know. Like I had a situation with an athlete that was homeschooled, very isolated in her sport, ice skating, only, basically spends most of her time by herself. And, so there wasn't a lot of like pulling out of her. I think I got her to a level where she felt comfortable talking to me and things like that. But what I accomplished in 8 weeks with that athlete versus what I could have accomplished, over like 6 months, would have been different. But I didn't know, like, oh, so maybe this isn't one of those situations where I'm like, I could definitely say I could do something with this athlete. So being smart about who you take on, where they're at, and whether you're the right person. So I don't know. I mean, I think you just have to ask yourself, like, because there's clients that have finished with me in the 8 weeks, and I'm like, they still need to continue to coach with me. So I also have to be, but I think there's a level, and this is one other thing I want to say. I think there's a level where you have to let the client go out and live life on their own. So yes, I could continue. Now it's different if you're in a team environment and you're going through seasons and year over year college stuff. But when you're you're not a therapist, you're getting paid for a certain set of time or whatever the case is, you have to be willing to cut that relationship off, because if I coached my clients until I wanted to stop, right, regardless of whether they were paying me or not, right, I would have a lot of clients not paying me possibly because I'm just like, I want to keep helping. So, but I think you got to let them go out and spread their wings and say, oh, I'm ready to fly out of the nest. It's like, okay. And then sometimes they stop because they're like, okay, this was good. I got a good growth. I got a good foundation here, which I think most of my clients get a really good growth in that 8 weeks. But then they go out and then they see how long they can fly. And then that's when but I know they're going to come back. And then we're going to have all that experience, So I think I look at it from that way. Like, my job isn't to necessarily walk with you forever. It's to give you as much as I can in the time I have you. And then my hope is that I've left enough of an indelible mark that when you need coaching again, you'll come back to me, or at least always credit, what we've done together. So I don't know. I don't know that I have the right answer to that question, but I think it's just important that you do, as a coach, let them fly, because they need to figure it out on their own, because you're not going to be there every moment of every day when they're making decisions. And so I mean, that's the beauty of being embedded in a team is you get longer to build up that relationship. You got a whole season, I mean, just thinking of NCAA basketball, they got like 50, 60, 70 games to play with, or the NBA, 90, what is it? It was 84 games regular season, and then whatever is beyond that, or 82, right. So that's a lot. But if you're not in those environments, then you do have to have some sort of cap. If you're not doing because I don't know, I don't like the one-offs. I'm just going to coach you, and then whatever. For me, it's a set program, and it's us going.
Okay, explain that. Say that again. You don't like the one-offs. What do you mean?
So what I mean is, like, sometimes friends will say, "Oh, I coach them. They pay per session." So it's like, okay, cool. So you come this week, and then I give you something, and then you're like, okay, cool. I guess I'll see you next week. And then maybe you're like, oh, I don't really need this coaching anymore. 2's good enough. To me, that's not enough for me to truly give you a transformation. So a one-off to me would be like where you're doing session-to-session coaching, which is fine. I mean, that's what therapists do. And of course, it's recommended that you stay with us for a certain amount of time, but I think you need to have a set amount of time that you believe you could create a transformation for that person based on, if you're not in a team context or some kind of environment that enables you to stay longer with that person. But I think it's more helpful, like 8, 12 weeks to really get people kind of kickstarted and enough of a thing that they'll either continue and then have something that they can grow into so that they can continue coaching with you. But I believe that the decision to end a coaching relationship should be mutual, but if it can't be, then you have to be willing to step aside or release a client because sometimes they're just not doing the work. And you have to be willing to say, I just don't know that I'm the right person for you because we've been together for X amount of time and I haven't been able to motivate you to do the right thing. So, and sometimes that may involve a refund or a partial refund or whatever the case is. So I think it's just, it's on a case by case basis, but you've got to feel it out. And sometimes they may say, yeah, this was great and I'm ready to fly. And then sometimes they may say, I need more, but I don't think this is where I want to continue, and can't take that personally either. It's like, I just know I'm a part of it. So.
Okay. Well, it's getting late and I know you gotta get that 4:30 earpiece in your ear. So I got two more quick questions. Two more quick ones. Well, let me ask at least. I knew the end one. Well, let me get to the end one. So, what is next for you? What do you want to? I mean, maybe you're already doing it. What do you want to? What do you want to do with this? For the rest of your life, you're still young, right? Do you want to stay in this? Do you want to expand it? What is what's next for you?
My vision is to have like an entire, sort of like what T. Harv Eker had. T. Harv Eker, Tony Robbins, not exactly the exact same way they did it, but having some ability to transform people on a mass level and do it with my programs, books, teachings, and then obviously having other coaches come. I want to touch as many people with this stuff as possible because I truly believe that we've been acquainted to our minds and the world in a way that is in some way hindrances to us truly harnessing our power, and not just as athletes or as business people, but as people, to get the maximum value out of life. Certain things have been prioritized that maybe need to be deprioritized, or just, different levels. And then also just kind of like looking to self-source versus, outside stuff. So anyway, that's what I want to do. I'm writing a book that'll be coming out soon. And then I also have just other, I have more retreats and things. But at some point, I want it to be just this master organization where I'm maybe not as coaching all the time, like having to be the only one that delivers the coaching. But I want to duplicate myself because I obviously can't coach everybody. And so I'm not doing the work that I really want to do if I'm keeping it all to where it all has to go through me. So eventually I want to scale this to like an organization where I've got lots of, not necessarily mini me's, but the same principles out there being taught and all that stuff. So yeah.
Wonderful. All right, one more question. This is the last one. So what do you do? What do you do to I guess recharge the battery, right? How do you keep yourself fresh, focused? You're given a lot, and so it's almost like. And do you find that like you're the go-to for everyone, not only your clients but maybe your friends or your family? Like, how do you keep yourself charged up? You're like, oh God, okay, no more clients. Then your mom calls and she's like, guess what? And you're like, oh shit, right?
No, I think I do that to myself. I don't know that my family, like, I think I like to help people. So I'm always sort of like my friends will call and or we'll be on the phone and they'll just be telling me something. And I just have to learn to turn it off because I'm like, oh, you shouldn't think that way. And then it turns into and they're like, okay, thanks, coach. You know what I mean? But it's like, so I think, they're just like, okay, yeah. And so I'm just, one day I'm going to learn how to just be like, do you just want me to listen? Because it's just what I do. But I think for recharging my battery is just spending time doing things I enjoy. I love to hike. I go out and walk every morning. I love just being out in, nature, but I'm not necessarily the walk on the grass with the bare feet kind of girl, but I do like to be out and enjoy some sun. I love to laugh. I love to spend time with people that I enjoy. And I'm just constantly reading things that stimulate me, and I love a great conversation. But yeah, do I get tired some days? Like, I have so many client appointments and some days that I'm just spent. Yeah, then I'm probably just going to watch something that I enjoy, comedy or something to kind of recharge myself and also just power down, not feel like I have to call a bunch of people or try to solve because like I said, I'm going to still attempt to do something. So it's just maybe I don't take that phone call. Maybe I don't text back right away. I had to learn clear boundaries with my clients too. And not that they were doing anything wrong, but they send you a message and you want to reply right then. But if it's 7:00 at night, then that teaches them that you're available at 7:00 at night. So I tell my clients after 5 and before 9 my time, I'm probably not going to respond. Even if I see your message, I'm going to respond to it at the business hours and stuff. So I had to find ways to kind of do that so that I could create those healthy boundaries within myself so that I'm not constantly prioritizing helping everybody over helping myself. But I think I've never been so great at, I'm not so involved in everything that I never take time for me, but I think, learning, I started getting massages this year and prioritizing more deliberate self-care, going back to manicures. I used to get a lot of manicures and pedicures when I worked where I had a job where I had to have those. And I hadn't been doing them as much. So just little things that I enjoy that give me just that little bit of I feel really good, So those are the things that I do because I want to train that to my clients too. Everything can't be about, I only read books on personal development. I'm always watching a documentary. It's no, that's not true. That's not true at all.
That's not the cap. Right.
Exactly. So I'm nah, do I love that stuff? Yes. But sometimes I'm I don't want to learn today. I just want to watch something stupid, So.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, hey, Coach, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you for the time. Like I said, I've literally heard so many great things about you and heard so many great things about you. And I was super excited to meet you. And just to pick your brain because you truly when I didn't see you, but I was hearing you talk, I was like, that's somebody who knows what they're doing. And that is the whole premise of this Lanes of Mastery is to pick the brain of someone who you don't have to know them, like them. You may not see them. You don't know who's talking, but you just know it. Right. Yeah. And so it is such an honor and privilege to talk to you and to get so much great information for me and the people who will hear this. And before I let you go, do you want to give out your contact info? Anybody who wants to maybe work with you or whatever?
Yeah, for sure. So if you're interested in working with me, I always say just get on my calendar, schedule a free call. It's a free coaching call, 30 minutes, and it's winwithbryn.asme/30-minute session, or just go to the link in my bio. Right, it's there. You can get on my calendar. Oh, it's not even a link in my bio. I think it's like book a call or something. You can do that on my Instagram, but or through my website, bryndrescher.com. But the biggest thing I was also just going to say is I have a podcast too, and it's called The Mental Advantage, and it's a great way to kind of get a sample of what I do if you're not ready to get coaching from me. Those are the two main things that I would plug right now, and I'm actually going to be starting it up.
Where can you find that?
It's on everywhere podcasts are found. The Mental Advantage Podcast is what it's called. You got to put the whole thing in. But there's like 60 episodes up there, and I'm about to start shooting them again. In fact, I was motivated by the Angel Reese situation from last night. I'll be shooting an episode about that. Probably in the next 24 hours, but yeah. So I'm going to get back at it, but I had stopped for a while. But I really enjoy talking about the mental aspect of things, and so I want to break things down and do more of like what I like to talk about. So definitely excited to talk about. Anyways, anything mindset, I'm like, yeah, let's talk about it. Even movies, I like to break them down. Like I'm like, there's a message here. Did you see it?
Yeah.